Okay, Pastor Brian, I got good news and I got bad news.
You got good news and bad news, huh?
Yeah.
Well, good news that you're here, or what's the good news?
Well, the good news is we've started fundraising to finish off a little bit left on the Fellowship Hall air conditioning, which is only $12,000 left out of $93,000.
It's true. It's true.
And we're doing a stretch goal to see if we can raise enough money to replace some carpeting in the sanctuary chapel and Fellowship Hall.
Yeah.
It's overdue. It needs to be done. It's stained. It's dirty. It's ripped. It's frayed. It's a little bit of everything. So
It's a little bit of everything.
And so
Yes.
it's time. And really, it's about, in some ways, I hate to be cliche, but it's like, this is God's house, and we should put our best into God's house.
Well, and like you mentioned, like it has been kicked down the road for a very long time. And so, okay, let's see what we can do to stretch ourselves.
That's right. And with only $12,000 left on that air conditioning to pay for, with the size of our church family, should not be a problem doing that. And then let's stretch ourselves to do some beautification and make the building beautiful for not only us to enjoy, but also for guests. You want to put our best foot forward when folks come to church. And I know some folks had said to me, not complaining, they said, "What about the chairs in the sanctuary?" I'm like, I can only do one thing at a time. It's like, we'll start with carpet, and then we'll work towards those chairs,
Yes.
Some of those are showing some age, yeah.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now the bad news.
Okay, the bad news.
I have that thing that I had in January in my nose and in my chest. It's the exact same
Some years
thing.
you just feel like you get hit over and over and over.
You know what I'm wondering is did I not really ever shake it, and it was just sitting inside of me, like dormant almost,
Yeah, waiting for the right time
to come back.
Like
if this was a Broadway show, we'd call it Virus Reprise,
Yeah,
So,
I think we would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this thing is like, wreaking havoc on my, and just so you know, Rachel has not caught it, the first time.
Yeah, well, and
or this time.
Yeah, the first time you actually recovered for a little bit in the middle too of the first one. Yeah.
I did, because
Like,
that's
when you went on your Grand Canyon trip. I think you left and you were recovered, and then
so that was to make the story longer.
Yes,
it hit on
which we are
Christmas.
looking
It
for.
hit on Christmas Eve,
yes, okay,
and I was miserable on Christmas Eve. Got through it.
that's right.
Kind of started to perk back up. Felt pretty good. The Grand Canyon trip, got back another week, and then boom, all in my chest and up here. And that one started with a lot of fatigue too, like drawn down. And then it was just all of this. So this one doesn't have any of the fatigue, but it's all the same chest and coughing and, So like massive amounts of Mucinex, Dayquil, Afrin,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't like taking that kind of stuff, but just to even be in this moment and like not coughing my brains out,
Well,
here I am. So I've been trying to. Rachel finally put her foot down. She's like, "You gotta go to the doctor." And
go see a doctor.
so
Yeah.
called my doctor's office this morning, and they said, "We'll call you back," which does not sound promising.
Yeah, you got a little bit of time.
So it
Or
may
see
be
they-
a part of the same health system that my doctor's office is a part of. I might be going to their quick care facility tomorrow morning.
We'll see if they call you back.
Yeah. I said, I'll see. They have, in my office, they have 2 PAs. I like both the physician's assistants and I like the doctor, the primary.
Well, then
I said, I'll
that's a
see
good
any
thing.
of them, right?
Yeah.
And they said, don't call us, we'll call you.
Okay.
So there may be a trip just over to the quick care, urgent care.
See what happens.
Yeah, if I don't get the call back. So, but I'm just putting this on video record because when Rachel put her foot down, like, you have to go see somebody. I want everybody to know that I did follow through. I did what I was told.
You did.
Yeah. So I don't want to.
We were all, yeah.
And we can check phone records and logs too, if we need
And we
to.
will.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was in Phoenix for a couple of days.
Yeah. So had a good trip.
Yep. So it was, well, we call her Meemaw. That's
Yes.
Rachel's mom. We,
Yep.
you know,
She's. This is her church too, right?
Arkansas. Yeah, she's a member. She watches every week from Peoria, Arizona. And Meemaw's from Arkansas, so we call her Meemaw, not Grandma. So
Okay.
we went down to Meemaw to celebrate her birthday, which was on Saturday, but on Sunday afternoon, after I ate some chili and talked to
Yes,
people.
you were at the chili cook-off.
Yep.
You didn't sing this year.
I
noticed that.
yeah.
Yeah.
A little tough. So went down there. We did a bunch of projects for her at her house. You know, a little birthday gift of just doing kind of manual labor, and took her out for dinner, and then we also took her to a Cubs spring training game, and which I like too. You know, and then came home. So yeah, so
Terrific.
it's been a whirlwind, and also fighting this at the same time. So, you know, go figure.
Go figure.
However, I will tell you that Phoenix, unlike Las Vegas, which, you know, for the record, I like Las Vegas way better than Phoenix metropolitan megaplex. The only benefit to where we stayed, which was a surprise, we stayed up in Glendale, up on Bell Road, which is a kind of a huge shopping, you know, commercial area with a mall and restaurants, like your typical, like Galleria area,
Okay.
you know, but it's huge. So we check into our Spring Hill Suites,
Yes.
and it's late, and we're like, I got to find something that's open like at 8:30 at night. And lo and behold, right next door to this hotel is the prime Chicago franchise by the name of Portillo's.
Portillo's.
Yes,
Yes.
we've been itching to get one here in town.
I've heard rumors of
Yeah,
that.
and our good friend Patrick Deely, who's a member here, as soon as they get it, he's a retired Chicago detective, and
Yeah.
if they come, then we're all going
Yes,
to have lunch.
he wants to go, and I want to give it a try.
Yeah,
But
so-
I don't think I've ever been there.
Yeah,
I think-
no, unless you've been to Chicago, you know.
Well, I know in California when I was
there's
there
one
for
in
a
Buena
while.
Park. There's one.
Yes,
in Buena
and
Park.
I know somebody there. Same way, they said we've got to go there, and I don't believe that it
made
ever
it?
happened.
Yeah.
No.
So lo and behold, there's a Portillo's next door, right? And I'm like, well, why go look for something? We can just walk across the parking lot. And so I did.
Yourselves a hot dog.
Well, I did not have a hot
You
dog.
didn't.
No,
What
I
else can you get at a
well,
hot dog shop?
you know, in Chicago, you always got to go for the beef sandwich, Italian beef.
Italian beef.
So
sandwich,
it's like
huh?
sliced thin roast beef that has been cooked in this Italian, I guess, kind of concoction au jus that has, you know, oregano and basil and then, but what I like on it is you can either get hot peppers or sweet peppers. I like the sweet peppers. The hot peppers are more like pickled, you know.
Okay.
But sweet peppers, so big, slow cooked, sweet pieces of green pepper across the top of that sandwich. That was good.
That was good, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. The only thing they messed up is in Chicago, there's 3 ways to eat an Italian beef sandwich. So if you ever go to Chicago, you'll know this. Dry, wet, or dipped. So dry is just the meat in the bun. It's a little moist, obviously. Wet is they put a little extra of the au jus in there, but it keeps the bun
That does make sense.
keeps the bun integrity. Dipped is they take the whole sandwich and they dunk it.
Oh.
And you pretty
Wow,
much have
so
to
they do it for you. You don't.
No,
You don't
no, you
dunk it
they
yourself.
right. But with that, you have to eat it with a fork and knife. So
If you dunk it.
yeah, so you know, I asked for it wet, and clearly Phoenix, not being Chicago,
They didn't know how.
they
to make
dipped
a,
it. Yeah, so they broke a protocol, and of the beef sandwiches, but I managed to choke it down.
Well,
So that turned out okay.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
It turned out okay.
Yeah, it turned out okay. So, so I got a little Chicago food in me while I was there. Got back wearing my Cubs shirt that I picked up at the.
It looks nice.
at the baseball game, and
Looks terrific.
you know they had 90-degree weather down there.
I did not know that. Wow.
So yeah, so it was
Wow.
90 on Tuesday, and it was their first 90-degree temp of the year, and it's still February, And once again, another reason why I like living in Las Vegas. Yeah, I know we get hot, but 90 in February is just,
Phoenix that's warm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think there's a reason one of their state universities' mascots are the Sun Devils, because it's pretty close to that place where the Sun Devils hang out. So.
There you go. There
So,
you go.
so anyways, that's my story. We're gonna deal with this
So, yeah.
weekend the Transfiguration story.
So yes, we are off to Transfiguration, which is a kind of a turning point
It
in the
is.
gospel
It is.
narrative.
and
Yeah.
that's what, and it's funny that it's it's a major story in the Bible, in the New Testament, but yet hardly anyone ever talks about it as that turning point. You notice that it's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
on the calendar. It always happens the
It's on the
Sunday before
calendar.
Lent, but nobody
Yes.
goes. But there's a reason it's there.
Yeah.
That something is changing, not just Jesus, but like there's a change in the direction of the story at that point, right?
There is.
And,
there is.
And
you
yet,
notice it. Yeah.
but for years, hearing people preach on it, they never say there's a reason that this is here. Is that the trajectory of the story changes
It does.
in that moment,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's
And
important.
so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about distractions this weekend and how sometimes they're annoying, but they're good and they're helpful for us, and a little bit about that Transfiguration story too. So looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to it as well.
Good,
So,
good. So it's the last weekly broadcast in the month of February. So we want to finish off with our last profile of Black History Month. And could we put that picture up for me, please? This is a woman by the name of Ella Jo Baker. And I've always tried to find folks that maybe you've heard very little of or maybe nothing at all. And this is another one of these folks of, once again, American history,
Yes.
not just Black history, American history, that she was a unsung hero of the civil rights movement. She worked for the NAACP.
Okay.
She worked for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. She worked for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC. And she was born in 1903 in Virginia, but grew up in North Carolina, and obviously had a sense of what it meant for people to be treated equitably in society, in large part because of her history and roots. Her grandparents were slaves, and her grandmother had been whipped for refusing to marry a man chosen for her. In other words, an arranged marriage. And she continued, her grandmother stood up to racism and injustice and inspired Ella Baker. And matter of fact, her grandparents lived on the land that they purchased on installments that was a part of the plantation that they were enslaved in.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about being close to, the injustice of your life, trying to buy land from the plantation that you were enslaved on. So that's where her grandparents were, but yet Ella Baker also showed aptitude, educationally speaking. She went to Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, challenged school policies. She graduated in 1927 as the valedictorian.
Okay.
And then moved to New York. And she first joined in 1930 the Young Negro Cooperative League to develop Black economic power through collective planning. She also was committed to economic justice, and this is one of her quotes: "People cannot be free until there's enough work in this land to give everybody a job." And I think that's a fair thing to say, is if everybody can work, then there's some economic opportunity for everybody. She worked in the NAACP and started in 1940, and then even as a director of several branches from 43 to 46. Just watched part of an interesting story on PBS about Walter White, who led the NAACP for a number of years, and a fascinating story, and somewhat controversial too. So I don't know if you saw that, but I was like, wow. And matter of fact, it was enough that we were watching it, and Rachel got on her phone to look up more about him because we were so fascinated
Yeah.
by this person. Anyway, so she worked for him. She was inspired by the Montgomery bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama, and she founded an organization called In Friendship to raise money for folks who were fighting against those racist Jim Crow laws. Then she moved to Atlanta in 1957 and worked for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, that Dr. King was a part of. She did voter registration for Crusade for Citizenship. And then, let me see. Yeah, and then also later on, even for SNCC, the Student Cooperating Committee. And so this woman, throughout her life, not one of those people out front, but somebody who is in the fight for the fight against injustice, the fight against racism, the fight for equality and inclusion, and maybe you haven't heard of
Fought
her.
for it her whole life.
Yeah. And so somebody that we should absolutely know who she is, because she led a quiet, at least in terms of a national spotlight, a quiet life, but was always there in the thick of things, doing the right thing, which is a person of integrity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're interested, look up Ella Baker online, and you can read more about her. And that's where I found the notes on her today. And
Okay.
But just somebody good for us to learn a little bit about today.
Yes, being aware of.
Yep.
Yeah.
So so we've spent this month, over the last few weeks, looking at different profiles of folks in Black culture and Black community. But it's, like I said, it's not just Black history. It is American history that we shouldn't, and use the term whitewash, and see the full expression of some of the great leaders in our country over the years too. So I think that this month gives us that opportunity to do some spotlighting on folks that really should be lifted up as examples of being people who made this country a better place.
I love it. Yeah. It's great.
So we're going to go back to 11 o'clock, and there was a wonderful song that reminds us of what it means to surrender ourselves, to kind of let God be God, and not us be in charge. And so let's take a listen to this song called Make Room, and I think you will find it will bless your heart. So let's watch.
Next slide, please.
Here's where I lay down every burden, every crown. This is my surrender. This is my surrender. Here is where I lay it down. Every lie and every doubt. This is my surrender.
So make room.
Make room.
And this song, let me give credit where credit's due. Written by Josh Farrow, Rebecca White, Evelyn Heiderquery, and Lucas Cortazio. People from King and Country and We the Kingdom. Those are a couple of
Okay.
contemporary
Yep.
bands out there. And the one who recorded this said that this was really an anthem for them personally during the pandemic, that they just knew that they had very little control in their life, so they just felt like this song expressed the surrender.
This is my surrender. This is
Yeah.
where I lay it down.
I mean, think about this. Like, when things are beyond your control, you really have a choice to fight it, even though it's still beyond your control. Like, just, headbutting, or you can just say, you know what, this is beyond me, and in a lot of ways, thy will be done, right?
Yeah.
But boy, you see people banging their head against a wall about stuff they have zero control over.
Yeah.
And it creates frustration, it creates anger, and in this time in our lives right here in 2025, there's a lot of things that we may be dissatisfied with, but at the same time, it's beyond our control.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
you can't do anything about it.
You can't carry it all. You can't hold
No.
it all. Yes.
And as much as I like, having these cushion panels behind us, beating my head against it long enough is going to break through and still not do anything but hurt me. You know what I'm saying?
I'd like to see you try though.
Would you? Maybe that'll be
Yeah.
an episode of putting my head through the sound deadening panels behind. Not the painting though.
Not the painting.
Painting
No,
is
keep the
sacred.
painting nice.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Not everybody likes the painting, but look at that.
It's a fine painting.
Look how well it frames me.
It does. It does.
That's right. It hides my
Yes.
double chin. I like it. So, not too bad. See, quick to the other shot, right? It's like, don't go there. But I love this idea of recognizing when something is beyond you and being able to let it go.
Yeah.
The other part of this song that I think that some people get worked up about is this in the bridge: shake up the ground of all my tradition and break down the walls of all my religion. Well, and because people associate those things with the wrong thing. What this song's getting at, and I totally resonate with it, so I'm not trying to water. It's like religion is stuff that humans make up.
Yeah.
Anything that is like religion those are like human-made things. And even as early as Isaiah, God's calling out like the false rules and made up religious stuff that humans are trying to put on God, right?
Right.
I mean, even God's calling out against false religion.
Right. Religion can be a practice that helps us to grow deeper, but it is also when it becomes something just for the sake of itself.
Yeah, dogmatic
yes,
human
yes.
rules, right? And you throw Jesus in there, and all of a sudden it's
Yes.
it's religion. And and that's the interesting thing is when you look at the tenets of or the foundation of the Lutheran Church, that we in a lot of ways have like this two-legged stool of faith and scripture. Like you have two things, and there's another Christian church, and I'm not going to name them, but they have a three-legged stool, and one of those legs is tradition. Like tradition holds as much weight as the scriptures and one's faith, and tradition can be good, but when it holds as much weight as the scriptures, I think you're looking for all sorts of trouble in a lot of ways. And tradition often gets to the point where you do something long enough and somebody's going to say, but we've always done it this way.
That's what happens.
And it's just like, it's like that old story about woman gets married and has a family, and she's going to host Christmas for the first time, and having the big dinner, and she's going to make Christmas dinner the way Grandma used to make, and so she's going to follow the recipe just the way Grandma used to. And so she buys the ham, and she always knows that Grandma used to cut off the end of the ham, the thinner end of the ham, and put it before putting it in the oven, because that's the way Grandma always did it. And her husband's like, well, why do you cut off the end of the ham? She's like, well, because that's the way Grandma did. So everybody's over for dinner, and they finally asked Grandma, like, Grandma, we were following your recipe.
Why are we doing this?
She said, because my oven was small and it couldn't fit a whole ham, so I always cut off the end of it so I could get the ham in. But that's how tradition ends up becoming a skewed thing, right? And so I think it's good when you can go back to the heart of what your faith is about. And it's about relationship, right? It's about having a friendship with Jesus. It's about being connected to Jesus. It's it's not about this, that, or the other thing. And in Colossians 2, which we don't often do a lot in Colossians.
No, we don't.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I think I used to call it Galoshes.
That's a great name for a book of the Bible.
Right?
We need another book.
Yeah,
The
Galatians. They don't even sell galoshes anymore, do they?
You know what? I have not purchased a pair.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Do you have any galoshes? Philip does not have a pair either.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Don't have a lot of call from out here in the desert. So, anyways,
So-
Colossians 2. Listen to this. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard to a religious festival, or a new moon celebration, or a Sabbath day. Here, listen to this, though. These are shadow of the things that were to come. The reality, however, is found in Christ. He's like, all the tradition and religion and religious stuff, he's like, those are shadow things.
Yeah.
He said they may point to Jesus, but the reality of all of it is just found in Christ. So get rid of the shadow things, right?
Yeah.
You don't need the shadow things. Do not let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship of angels disqualify you from the prize. Such a person goes into great detail about what they have seen, and their unspiritual mind puffs them up with idle notions that they have lost connection with the head, that is Christ, from whom the whole body is supported together by its ligaments and sinews and grows as God causes it to grow. So the author here just really cuts to the bone on this thing.
Yeah.
He's like, stop with the shadow stuff. Well, you got to do it this way. And God's only happy if you use the old version of the Lord's Prayer. And if you don't do this before communion, then it's, like all of that kind of baloney, right?
Right. You got to do it in a certain order,
Certain way.
Yes.
What? What do you mean you don't do a New Year's Eve worship to welcome in the new, it's all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to we gather to open our hearts in worship, and we may have a certain order in the way we do things, but that stuff is never set in stone. And even in that if the Spirit is moving us to do something, we're going to let the Spirit move in that because we want to make that connection, because that's first and foremost, as opposed to everything has to be so locked down and so this and so that you're really just doing performance at that point, and
This is not about Jesus first and foremost.
yeah,
It's about
the thing,
The thing.
whatever the thing is, And I really like this other part about, man, don't fall for the slick talk, folks. They go into great detail about what they've seen. Oh, I've experienced this, and God told me that, and I had this revelation, and it contradicts everything else that we know that's been written down. And it's like, and their unspiritual mind puffs them up with idle notions.
puffeth.
Yeah, puffeth
Yes.
up. Only listen to me because I've had this thing happen to me, and I'm telling you that's the truth. And but what about the 2,000 years of bedrock scripture that we have that tells and paints a story for us in which is easy to digest, and
Well, you could have that, or you could have idle notions.
yeah, right.
So-
But you know what? People like idle notions. I hate to say it, but
Yeah.
there's
We
some
do.
folks out there that prefer that.
It's true.
And
No, it is very true.
so that goes back to that whole thing in that same bridge, singing about God. Your way is better. There's nothing to add to that, right? Oh, my way, somebody else's way with idle notions and puffed up, or God's way is better. Well, I think that's a pretty clear choice, right?
I think it should be.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it's not like we've somehow cracked the code on that, and myself included. So I'm not pointing fingers. Like, oh, we don't need church anymore because we got it all figured out. We're on the right path now, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be a short-term operation. And I think we taught everybody what they needed to know, and we can move on now, right? No, we're still all working on that. I mean, and then if you go back to Romans, where we know Paul wrote this letter to the church of Rome, he hadn't been there. He knows a few folks there, and he's trying to pour into them all the stuff that he's learned because he doesn't know when he's going to get to Rome. So he's like, I'm just going to write this really long letter so that everybody knows what I'm thinking in case I don't ever make it there. Mm-hmm. And he gets into that same subject of like, well, some people believe this and some people believe that, and he's like, let me just address it. So you want to share that?
Yeah, just trying to get into the heart of the matter here. So from Romans 14, one person considers one day more sacred than another. Another person considers every day alike. Each one should be fully convinced in their own mind. The one who regards one day as special does so to the Lord. The other who eats meat eats to the Lord, for he gives thanks to God. And the one who abstains does so to the Lord and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives to themselves alone, and none of us dies to ourselves alone.
So he's like, okay, you folks fight over the religious stuff.
Yes.
The goofy, no, this is what you have to believe, and no, this is what I do. And he's like, you guys are fighting over the stupid.
We have this day, you have that day.
Yeah, right.
This time you don't eat.
He's like, if you're doing it for the right reason, you don't have to fight over it. If you think Sunday is special, knock yourselves out. If you like all 7 days, that's awesome. But please don't get into a religious war over dumb stuff, right? And then the one nuance in this is he's talking about eating meat and abstaining. So the whole backstory on that is back in the Roman Empire days. So there were temples to all these gods, and they often did sacrifice the way the Jewish temple did, and so they were doing animal sacrifice. But they figured out how to make money doing it. Is that somebody would offer an animal, and they'd offer a sacrifice, but there was a meat market in the back. So they wouldn't do a burnt offering. They'd just do an animal sacrifice, and then they'd take it back to the grocery store behind the temple and sell the meat.
Yeah.
And so it was like, that's how they made money. It's like, you offer a sacrifice to the God's happy, and now we're going to turn around and sell the meat, and we make money, right? And so there was this notion as a Christian, like, oh, I can't eat meat that was, at the Zeus market because it was sacrificed to Zeus.
That was for another god.
Yeah, right. So if I'm eating, ribeye steaks sacrificed to Zeus, then I'm indirectly helping Zeus, right? And so some people said, I just can't do it. And Paul's like, that's cool. That's cool. You don't.
Yeah.
And then he's like, then there's other people who are like, well, Zeus is a false god, so it really doesn't matter. And he's like, you're right about that too. Go ahead and eat meat.
Yeah.
But don't have fights over it. Yeah. And then he also says, don't be a stumbling block to one another either, which is the same way of saying don't fight over this stuff. Yep. Like, don't be a stumbling block to somebody. Whatever you're going to do, if you're doing it for Jesus, knock yourselves out.
Yep.
Right?
That's it.
And so, I always thought that was an interesting, like, if you didn't know that, you're like, what's the deal with meat? It was all about the false god butcher shops.
Yes.
That were back there,
Yes. This steak is for this god.
Yeah, right, right. The
Fun
filet
times
mignon for Apollo and so on and so forth.
Right.
So, yeah. And then lastly today, from the book of Jeremiah, and you want to talk about, here's where I lay it down, every burden, every crown. This is my surrender. This is where I lay it down. every lie and doubt. This is my Jeremiah lived a surrendered life.
Yeah.
You know, he was this
Yeah.
prophet during the last days of Jerusalem. Jerusalem was going to fall to the Babylonians. Jeremiah was like, guys, you need to turn back to God before it's too late. And then there came a point, he was like, it's too late. It's going to happen. He said, so now you might as well surrender to the Babylonians because this is inevitable. And so he was so surrendered to God that he not only listened, but whatever it was that he was being, and he was mistreated by the leadership, that he was just willing to like let it happen because he's like, my life is for God only. And he's like, if you want to mistreat me because you don't like the words that God is saying, well, then so be it.
Yeah, surrendered is kind of the word.
He lived a surrendered life, and it was not an easy life. And there comes a point in chapter 10 of the book of Jeremiah, which is, by the way, if you didn't remember this, he had a scribe. And the scribe was writing things down as he was doing stuff, and his name was
Baruch.
Baruch. I love that name. That would have been a
great
good name
name.
too, right?
Yeah, it is a good
Kian
name.
Baruch Ward.
Yeah.
That's not a bad
Baruch.
that's not a bad middle name, you know. So that might be better than some of the ones I suggested.
It didn't quite crack the,
Yeah,
crack
right.
the top 10,
Not
but,
quite, not quite. But I like Baruch.
Yeah.
But here Jeremiah prays to God. And it's really a statement, but it's so true. Listen to this. I'm just going to read one verse of this prayer. He says, I know, O Lord, that a person's life is not their own. It is not for a human to direct their steps. It's very Proverbs-esque.
Yeah.
And you get to this place where he's like, Jeremiah knows. He's like, you know, my life is not mine. It belongs to you, God. I'm surrendered to you. And he's like, it's not even me to direct my steps, because he's often doing either what God has told him, or he's doing something that he would have never chosen for himself because other people are forcing, ill will on him.
Yeah.
And so I guess today the thing that I would remind you is know the things that you have control over. Be aware of the things that you have no control over. And you got to let go of the things that you can't control, because we spend way too much energy worrying and fussing and being concerned about things we have no control over.
Yeah.
Instead, focus on that surrendered life to Jesus, and he'll guide the way for us. So
That's the key.
that's it. That's all we can do.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us today. We hope you have a good rest of your day, and you take care of yourselves. God bless you. We hope to see you this weekend, whether on Saturday night at 5 or 8, 9:30, or 11 on Sunday morning. We'd love to see you. So, all right, take care. We love you. God bless you. And Philip, will you play us out?